NewsTalk 102.3, 1240 on the AM side. We'll go to the phone line.
And we want to welcome Dr. Roger Hall to the program. He has a doctorate in counseling and psychology and is an executive coach to entrepreneurs, leaders, and he is a public speaker throughout the whole U.S. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And so, Dr. Hall, we've got everything changes every day in this country. We're going to talk about political rationalizers and how we lie to ourselves. But right quick, I wanted you to speak to the fact that everyone is going out for mass gatherings and protests. And how can we explain the rationale of all of that?
Yeah, sure. Anytime human beings are uncertain, anytime they don't know what to do, they look around to what other people are doing and imitate them.
Okay.
So right now, because of the coronavirus, because of what's happened in Minneapolis, people feel uncertain. They want to express something, so they see other people doing those same things, so they join in. Human beings are pack animals. They like to be around other people and do what other people are doing.
Well, and so coronavirus, COVID-19 be damned, we're going to all get in mass gatherings and go protest. That's just our nature.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that the social norm a week and a half ago was don't go out, and within a couple weeks, the social norm has changed that we should get together and engage in mass protests. It's that someone somewhere along the lines got the idea that this was a good idea, whether it is or not is immaterial, but other people then begin to imitate it.
So, in a way, you could kind of say that we're lying to ourselves as we're doing that, because you don't know if the virus may spread as a result of this. You are seeing some spikes in some areas. And, we also lie to ourselves when it comes to politics as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Human beings are an inherently self-deceptive species. I'm included. We're all like that. Anytime you're in a store, you're in Costco, and you're looking at the 70-inch flat screen LED TV, and you start telling yourself, "Gosh, I need to get rid of that Energy Hog plasma TV that I have. Every time I turn it on, I feel like I'm cutting down a tree in the Amazon." And, you start to tell yourself convenient lies that make you feel better about your decision. And the same is true in politics. Anytime we vote for somebody, we make a commitment to that person. And as a result, we tend to start telling ourselves things that make us feel better about the decision we've made.
So in other words, we gravitate to news and such that we are like-minded with, correct?
Absolutely. When we hear information that is contrary to what we believe, it creates an internal conflict that we have to resolve. And one way to resolve it is to examine the information and evaluate the different beliefs and come to either the same conclusion or a different conclusion, the other of which is to just look for information that supports our previous decision. And it's easier to just look for information that supports our previous decision.
Is there any such thing I'm sorry.
It's called a confirmation bias. And so we tend to look for stuff that confirms what we already believe. Don't bother me with the facts. I already know what I believe.
Well, that's what I was just fixing to ask you. Is there such thing as a fact anymore?
Well, I believe there are facts. I do. But there are people, it's easy, especially with a 24-hour news cycle and so many news sources, to find different ways of interpreting the same facts. And we tend to interpret facts that coincide with what we already believe. As we connect the dots, we draw the line the way that fits with what we already believe.
And so a politician, for example, could say something and be recorded on video saying that very thing, and then yet it is spinned in such a way that it's if someone doesn't like what it says, or he did not mean to say that, or what have you, it can be spinned in such a way to go either way. You see where I'm going with that?
Oh, absolutely. And so the longer the interview, the more sound bites, the more 15-second sound bites we can pull, and we can stack up sound bites that sound like what we want. I had an interesting observation. I remember early in the years of the Survivor show. You probably know that show. One of the contestants said they have so much video of us, they just cherry pick the pieces that create the story that they want. And it's changed my way of viewing all television. Really?
And do you feel that you, is there a way to be, I don't know the word, is there a way to be, there's a word that I'm searching for, and it's early in the morning. It's not optimistic, but anyway, to be even, both sides, to consider both sides.
Absolutely, absolutely. The first is to recognize that as a human being, we are all subject to this self-deception. If you don't think you're self-deceptive at all, then I worry about you. The second is to seek out information from different sources. So depending on what your worldview is, find people who disagree with you, read that information. And it's easy to get angry at that, but if you pull back and take some time for quiet reflection, then think, okay, these are people who, some of whom have the best intent, that they want to pay their mortgages and feed their kids and be honest. If you assume those things, then you start looking at, okay, why would they believe these things that are so different than what I believe, and why do they report things that are so different?
Right.
So I my daily habit is when I consume news, I look at both sides, people I agree with and then people I disagree with. Because if I don't, then I get into an echo chamber and engage in a confirmation bias.
Right. And if you hold a negative view of a person, you're going to be more apt to believe a false or negative information about that person, right?
Yeah. This is called the attitude heuristic. And so let's say I've got a buddy, his name's Bob, and he and I have been friends for 20 years. Which am I more likely to believe? That every Wednesday afternoon Bob secretly leaves work to go read to dyslexic children, or that every Wednesday afternoon Bob secretly leaves work to deposit cash into a safety deposit box that he's embezzling from work? Both are false statements.
Right.
But which do you think I'm more likely to believe?
That he's reading.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, he's reading to dyslexic kids. And the opposite is true. And my favorite example is Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman worked very hard to create, the bad as I want to be image. And that was a decision that he made. Nobody would have remembered him as the best rebounder in the NBA, but he worked, with the green hair and the piercings and the tattoos to give himself that image. So now what do we believe about Dennis Rodman? That as a teenager he was arrested for petty theft, or that as an adult he was central to the negotiating the hostage releases from North Korea?
Right.
Well, the second is true. I have no idea about the first.
Well, and the word that I was searching for is objectivity, and I don't know how we can get to a place of objectivity. As a former newspaper reporter, that was something that we had to adhere to. Well, that's not so much the case anymore, as we know.
I think part of that is because there's so much demand for information for news. You know, in the age of newspapers, there were one or two newspapers and a limited amount of paper each day, so editors made decisions about what got in and what didn't. So only the best got in. Now that we have, 8 full-time news, 24-hour-a-day news networks, they've got to fill time. And so there's a lot of not good reporting that gets put in there.
And let's talk about some of the solutions that you have come up with for some of this stuff.
Sure. So the first is the one that we've talked about already, is visit internet sites that have a different political worldview than you. Read what people who disagree with you are thinking. The second is assume best intent. We're likely to have negative attitudes about those who disagree with us, and as a result, we're likely to believe the worst of them. Now, we don't usually know what people's motives are, but we like to pretend that we do. So assume best intent. The next is recognize that you lie to yourself. If you think you're perfectly rational, you're heading for trouble.
All right.
I guess the last thing I would say is clear your browser cookies, because your internet search, your internet search engine is continuing to feed you stories it thinks you want. So it will narrow and narrow the stories to be more and more consistent with your worldview.
All right. Wonderful information, Dr. Hall. Dr. Roger Hall, he is a business psychologist, executive coach, national speaker, and author of Staying Happy, Being Productive, the Big 10 Things Successful Do, and Expedition. And where can our listeners pick up your book?
They can find my book on Amazon. It's Staying Happy, Being Productive, and they can learn more about me at my website, drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com.
All right, Dr. Hall, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate being invited on.
You bet.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Barbara Hooser at Texas Custom Interiors. There's something exciting